It was Sunday, February 1st, 2004. In Sarasota, Florida. The air was warm but not heavy, the kind of evening where the sun dips lazily and the neighborhoods glow in an orange haze. Across the country, millions of Americans were preparing for the Super Bowl. Pizza ovens were heating. Families were gathering in front of television sets, and laughter spilled out of living rooms. For 11-year-old Carlie Brucia, it was supposed to be a night like that too, a night of football, snacks, and family. She had been at a friend's house that afternoon, enjoying the carefree hours that make up childhood weekends. As evening approached, she decided to walk the short distance home. Her family usually drove her when she needed rides. They were protective, careful, but fate is cruel in the way it uses timing against us. That day, her stepfather was delayed just by minutes that would soon mean everything. The last walk. Carlie set out along B Ridge Road, a busy commercial street lined with small businesses. On her path stood LV's car wash, the kind of place most people drive past without a second thought. Neon lights glowed above its open bays, water dripping from freshly rinsed cars. Just beyond, a miniature golf course buzzed with families. An ice cream parlor glimmered in the distance. It was still light outside. People were nearby. For any parent, this would have felt safe. But safety is an illusion. And for Carlie, the illusion was about to break. The watchful eye of a camera. At exactly 6:20 p.m., a surveillance camera mounted above the car wash turned its unblinking eye toward the sidewalk. The grainy footage it recorded would later become infamous, broadcast on every national news channel, burned into the memory of millions. In the video, Carlie appears first, a small figure walking briskly, her pink backpack bouncing against her shoulders. She cuts across the car wash lot, just as dozens of kids in Sarasota had done before her. But then another figure enters the frame. A man, tall, disheveled, tattooed, arms visible even in the poor resolution. His hair is dark, messy. His clothes are loose, like those of a working mechanic. His name, though the world didn't know it yet, was Joseph P. Smith. He doesn't hesitate. He approaches Carlie directly. He leans down, speaking to her. We'll never know exactly what he said. Maybe he pretended to ask for directions. Maybe he used a friendly tone to lower her guard. But then his hand reaches out. The camera catches it, the unmistakable image of him gripping the girl's arm. And in seconds, he leads her off screen. Carlie doesn't scream. She doesn't fight in a way the camera shows. She looks uncertain, maybe scared, but she doesn't know this man. She doesn't know the danger yet. And just like that, she is gone. The missed ride. Meanwhile, only minutes away, Carlie's stepfather, Steve Kanzler, was driving. He had planned to pick her up, but first had to grab his son. He thought he was just a little behind schedule. Later, in disbelief, he would tell investigators, I missed her by just a couple of minutes. A couple of minutes. That phrase would haunt the family forever. The first alarm. When Carlie didn't arrive home, her parents knew something was wrong. It wasn't like her to be late. Within 30 minutes, they called the police. Her mother, Susan Shorpen, would later tell People magazine, in my heart, in my mind, I knew. Immediately, I knew something was wrong. For most missing children, the first few hours are filled with hope. Maybe she got lost. Maybe she went back to her friends. But for Carlie's family, dread set in instantly. A community shocked. Within hours, the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office had officers scouring the area. Word spread quickly. A young girl, last seen near a car wash. Parents clutched their children a little tighter that night. When investigators pulled the car wash surveillance tape, their hearts sank. On the grainy screen, they watched the nightmare unfold in real time. An innocent girl, a stranger, a hand on her arm, a disappearance. It was daylight, It was public. Families were within 300 feet, and still, a child had been stolen. The sheriff's department released the footage to the public. Soon, the clip was on every TV in America. For parents watching, it was the embodiment of their worst fear, a predator bold enough to snatch a child in front of everyone. The manhunt. Tips poured in. People studied the tattoos on the man's arms, the shape of his face, the slouch of his walk. Some thought they recognized him, and someone did. A woman, Joseph Smith's roommate, saw the broadcast. Her blood went cold. She knew those tattoos. She knew that face. She went to the police. Joseph Smith was already known to law enforcement. He was 37, a father of 3, originally from Brooklyn. He had a long record of drug arrests and worse. In 1998, he had been charged with kidnapping and false imprisonment, though he was acquitted. Now, the evidence was mounting. His car, a yellow Buick Century station wagon, was seen near the car wash minutes before the abduction. Carlie's pink backpack was found, linking her to him, and soon DNA would tie it all together. But the most haunting moment came when Smith finally cracked during police questioning. He revealed where they could find Carlie. The grim discovery. For days after the abduction, detectives followed Smith's directions to a small, overgrown area near a church, only a few miles from where she'd been taken. There, hidden in the brush, they found Carlie's body. She was partially undressed, nude from the waist down except for one sock. The autopsy would confirm what everyone feared. She had been sexually assaulted, then strangled. For her family, hope ended that day. And for the community, rage began.
She was just a goofy little 6th grade girl who wanted to wear a sun visor in the gym because it said she could wear it outside. And I mean, just funny little things.
A lot. It means everything, to have, Carlie's a beautiful girl, and she needs to have her legacy with this beautiful garden, which it currently is.
Looking out today where we see the butterflies flying, and that was the whole reason that we did what we did.
We got to revamp this. It didn't look all too good at the beginning, and I really liked the way the seed came out, planting all the plants, remulching. I just mowed the lawn. It looks beautiful.
Who was Joseph Smith? To understand the horror of Carlie's case, we have to look at the man who took her, Joseph P. Smith. On the surface, Smith was just another face in Sarasota. A 37-year-old father of 3, a man who could blend into background at a gas station, a grocery store, or a car wash. But beneath that ordinary exterior was a life spiraling out of control. He was born in New York, raised in Brooklyn, and by his teenage years, he was already in trouble. Drugs, theft, arrests. His criminal record began early. Over time, his life became a cycle of addiction and petty crime. He was in and out of jail for heroin possession and burglary, always chasing his next fix. But drugs weren't the most disturbing part of Smith's past. Back in 1993, he had been accused of kidnapping and false imprisonment. The details were chilling. A woman claimed he had forced her into his car at knife point. But the case fell apart. He was acquitted, free to walk, free to reoffend. Those who knew him later described Smith as volatile, violent when high, manipulative when sober. His own brother would testify that Joseph was dangerous. His ex-wife spoke of abuse, chaos, and fear. By the winter of 2004, Smith's life was unraveling. He had lost his job. He was using drugs heavily, and he had no stable place to live. Friends described him as desperate, unstable, angry at the world. And then he crossed paths with Carlie Brucia. The aftermath of the tape. When police released the car wash surveillance video, the entire community froze. Parents refused to let their kids walk alone, even in daylight. The image of Joseph Smith leading Carlie away was broadcast on national networks, dissected on talk shows, and burned into the minds of millions. It was a nightmare scenario, a predator who didn't lure a child from a dark alley, but took her boldly, in public, under the gaze of cameras. For Carlie's mother, Susan, watching the tape was unbearable. She later said, "I saw her face. I saw the way she looked up at him. She looked scared, but she didn't know. She couldn't have known." The nation held its breath, waiting for the outcome. The confession. After tips led police to Smith, he was arrested on February 6, 2004. Investigators pressed him for hours. At first, he denied everything. He claimed he didn't know Carlie, that he wasn't the man in the tape. But the evidence was mounting. Witnesses, his car, his tattoos, his prior record. And then came the pressure. Finally, Joseph Smith broke. He admitted to taking Carlie. He admitted she was no longer alive. And he led detectives to her body. For investigators hardened by years of grim work, this was one of the most haunting discoveries of their careers. One detective said later, "It never leaves you, the way we found her, the way we knew would have been done." The trial of Joseph Smith. The trial began in 2005, and from the very first day, it was clear this would not be an ordinary courtroom drama. The prosecution came armed with a mountain of evidence. The surveillance video, DNA linking Smith to Carlie, and his own damning confession. In court, Smith looked nothing like the man in the car wash tape, cleaned up in a collared shirt. He sat quietly, but the jury could not unsee that video. They could not forget the way he placed his hand on Carlie's arm. Witnesses testified to his drug use, his violent tendencies, his criminal history. Experts painted a picture of a man consumed by addiction and rage, someone who had long been a danger to society. Carlie's family sat in the courtroom every day, forced to hear the details of her last moments. The autopsy report was read aloud. Words like sexual assault and strangulation hung in the air like poison. When the prosecution showed the surveillance video to the jury, the room went silent. Even seasoned reporters looked away. After weeks of testimony, the jury delivered their verdict. Guilty of kidnapping, sexual battery, and first-degree murder. The sentencing phase was emotional. Carlie's family gave impact statements, describing the hole left in their lives. Her father, Joe Brucia, faced Smith directly and said, "I hope you burn in hell for what you did to my little girl." The jury recommended the death penalty. The judge agreed. Joseph Smith was sentenced to die by lethal injection. The weight of guilt. For Carlie's family, the verdict brought justice, but not peace. Her stepfather, Steve, the man who had been just minutes late picking her up, struggled with crushing guilt. Friends said he replayed that day in his mind endlessly, wondering if he could have saved her. Her mother, Susan, spiraled into grief. In interviews, she admitted she couldn't stop imagining Carlie's final moments, her fear, her confusion, her pain. The thought tortured her. And then came another tragedy. In 2009, just 5 years after Carlie's death, Susan herself died suddenly from an illness. Friends believed grief had consumed her long before. A community changed forever. Carlie's murder didn't just devastate her family. It shook the nation. The case led to calls for tougher laws against sex offenders and stricter monitoring of parolees. In Florida, it became a rallying cry for reform. People demanded that predators like Joseph Smith never be given a chance to hurt again. Carlie's name became synonymous with the danger of child abduction in America. Parents pointed to her story as the ultimate warning. Don't ever let your child walk alone, not even for a minute. The end of Joseph Smith. For years, Joseph Smith sat on death row, filing appeals, claiming he hadn't gotten a fair trial. His lawyers argued about technicalities, about drug use clouding his mind, about past mistakes in the justice system. But no appeal could erase the tape. No lawyer could erase the truth. In July 2023, nearly 2 decades after Carlie's murder, Joseph Smith died in prison. Not by execution, but from an illness. At 55 years old, His life ended quietly, far from the horror he had unleashed on that February evening. For many, his death brought a final sense of closure. For others, it was too merciful. The legacy of Carlie Brucia. Carlie Brucia was just 11 years old. She loved music. She loved being with her friends. She loved the simple joys of childhood. In another life, she might have grown up to be a teacher, a mother, an artist. Instead, her life became a warning, a reminder of how fragile safety really is. Her story is told in whispers by parents to their children. Be careful. Don't talk to strangers. Remember what happened to Carlie. It is a tragedy frozen in time, captured forever on that grainy surveillance video. The psychology of a predator. What makes someone like Joseph Smith capable of such horror? Psychologists who studied his case described him as a man consumed by addiction, rage, and impulse control issues. He wasn't a meticulous planner like some serial offenders. He was chaotic, volatile, the kind of predator who strikes when opportunity collides with desperation. That's what made him so dangerous. On February 1st, 2004, Smith wasn't hunting Carlie specifically. He was roaming, high on cocaine and heroin, agitated, angry at the world. Experts say in those moments, his judgment was clouded, his conscience silenced by chemicals and cravings. And then he saw her, a young girl walking alone, vulnerable, innocent. That's all it took. To the outside world, the crime seemed brazen, a kidnapping in public on a busy road, in front of cameras. But to Smith, the surveillance camera didn't matter. His brain wasn't processing consequences. He was operating on impulse, on a toxic blend of lust, violence, and drugs. One forensic psychologist later remarked, Smith is an example of how untreated addiction and unresolved violent tendencies create a ticking time bomb. He was going to explode. Carlie just happened to be in his path. It's a haunting thought. If Carlie had left her friend's house just 5 minutes later, or if her stepfather had arrived just a few minutes earlier, their paths may never have crossed. But in the cruel mechanics of fate, those few minutes sealed her destiny. The media frenzy. The moment the FBI released the car wash video, the story became national news. Cable networks ran the footage in loop. The grainy figure of Carlie, her pink shirt visible in black and white, the man's hand gripping her arm. The chilling normalcy of it all captivated and terrified millions. Talk shows speculated about the man's identity. News anchors warned parents across America. The story dominated headlines for days, with reporters swarming Sarasota, broadcasting from outside Carlie's home, the police station, the car wash. It wasn't just another crime story. It was a cultural flashpoint. For years, parents had told their children about stranger danger. But this case showed it in real time, in haunting clarity. The tape didn't show a van pulling up or a dark alley. It showed a man casually leading a child away in broad daylight. That image became a national nightmare. The media pressure also pushed investigators. Every move police made was broadcast. Every delay was criticized. The public demanded answers, demanded Carlie be found. When her body was finally discovered, the collective grief of a nation poured out in vigils, in flowers, in candlelight ceremonies. And in that grief, there was fury. Fury at Joseph Smith, fury at the system that had allowed him back on the streets. Lessons for law enforcement. Carlie's case changed the way law enforcement handled child abductions. First, the surveillance video. Never before had investigators released such a crucial piece of evidence so quickly, directly to the public. Some feared it would compromise the case. But in reality, it did the opposite. The nation became a detective with thousands of tips flooding hotlines. Second, it highlighted the importance of speed. Studies later showed that in child abduction cases, the first 3 hours are the most critical. After that window, survival chances plummet. For Carlie, the window had already closed before the search began. But her case reinforced the urgency. Police departments across the U.S. revised their missing child protocols, focusing on immediate, aggressive mobilization. Third, it exposed the gaps in tracking repeat offenders. Smith's criminal record was long, his behavior well documented, yet he slipped through the cracks, free to abduct again. The outrage helped fuel debates on stricter sentencing and closer monitoring of high-risk offenders. The trauma that never healed. For Carlie's family, the story didn't end with Smith's conviction. Trauma like theirs doesn't fade. It lingers, reshaping lives in quiet, painful ways. Her younger brother grew up in the shadow of her memory, often compared to the sister who never had a chance to grow older. Friends of the family recalled how her mother, Susan, was never the same. She tried to appear strong in interviews, calling for justice, thanking the public, but privately she crumbled. When Susan died just 5 years later, some who knew her said grief had been eating her from inside. She died of a broken heart, one family friend said softly. Even Carlie's stepfather, Steve, struggled. He blamed himself endlessly. To outsiders, it seemed irrational. How could he have known? But for him, the guilt was inescapable. He replayed those minutes again and again. If only he had driven faster, left earlier, taken a different route. Grief is a way of twisting time, trapping survivors in an endless loop of what-ifs. A nation changed. Carlie's story left scars far beyond Sarasota. Across the U.S., parents tightened rules. Fewer kids were allowed to walk home alone. The phrase, "I'll be fine, it's just a short walk," lost its innocence. Schools used her story in safety talks. Police cited it in training. Lawmakers pointed to it when pushing for tougher measures against predators. Even today, if you mention the car wash video, many Americans remember it instantly. The blurry clip of a child being led away has become one of the most infamous crime recordings in modern history, a symbol of vulnerability, a warning carved into memory. Closing reflection. Carlie Brucia's abduction is not just a crime story. It's a story about fate, about timing, about the fragility of everyday life. She didn't wander into danger recklessly. She wasn't in the wrong place at the wrong time. She was just a child, walking home after a playdate on a street where families laughed over ice cream just yards away. And yet, danger found her. The horror of Carlie's case lies not only in what Joseph Smith did, but in how easily it happened, how quickly, how ordinary it looked, until it was too late. Even now, 2 decades later, her story lingers. In Sarasota, there are still flowers left at the site near the car wash. Online forums still discuss the case. Parents still invoke her name when warning their kids. Carlie Brucia should have grown up, graduated high school, lived a full life. Instead, she became a cautionary tale, a ghost caught forever on grainy film. And maybe that's why her story still haunts us, because it could have been anyone's child, because the difference between safety and tragedy was only a matter of minutes.